One late night call, one fake relationship. I thought I was helping a friend. I didn't know that weekend would change everything in Los Angeles and in my heart. In Los Angeles, sound never really disappears, even close to midnight. Outside my Koreatown apartment window, sirens, music from passing cars, and the low hum of someone's AC all blended together. I was staring at my laptop screen, pretending to finish end-of-month reports, when my phone buzzed on the table. 11:43 p.m. At that hour, there are usually only two types of calls: spam or a friend who's way too comfortable with insomnia. The name on the screen made me blink. Mia Thompson, coworker. The girl who always wore big headphones at her desk laughed quietly at jokes no one else heard and somehow made filing reports look like an indie TikTok aesthetic. A notification had come in just before. "Mia, are you still awake?" I just started typing, "Yeah, why? Everything okay?" Before my thumb could hit send, her call came through. I raised an eyebrow and answered, "Hey, Mia, you good?" Her voice sounded rushed, like she'd just run a marathon without moving. "Mia, Lucas, please tell me you're awake," she said. My name is Lucas Carter, the accounting guy who always got stuck with overtime, a fan of cheap coffee, and secretly, unfortunately, kind of into the girl who was calling me. "I'm awake," I said, trying to sound casual. "If this is about a spreadsheet exploding, I'm exploding with it." She gave a small laugh, but it was fragile. "This isn't about work. I need a favor, a big one." I glanced at the time again, 11:45 p.m. "Mia, at this hour, big favor usually means driving someone to the ER or burying a body in the Mojave. I charge double for the second one." This time she really laughed, but the tremor was still there. "Lucas," something in her tone made me sit up straighter on the couch. Outside, LA's lights flickered like a city that did not care about anyone's problems. "My parents are coming to LA this weekend. They're flying in from Ohio. They're very traditional, and I may have kind of told them I'm dating someone." I closed my eyes. "Let me guess. Somehow I'm in that story." Silence for a few seconds. Then, softly, almost like a confession, "Yeah, I told them it was you." My heartbeat switched to a whole new rhythm. "Wait, you're serious?" "I know it's crazy," she said, her breathing tight, "but they keep thinking I'm lonely, behind in life, the girl who only marries her job. They worry, they nag, and I'm exhausted. You're the only person I trust enough to ask." Safe. Not the word someone secretly in love wants to hear, but at least it wasn't disgusting. "Mia," I said quietly, holding back a dozen questions, "you want me to pretend to be your boyfriend in front of your parents for one weekend?" Yes, that one word was full of panic, hope, and a little shame. I rubbed my face. Outside, a car horn screamed like it wanted to weigh in. "Okay," I said finally. "One question." "Anything," she answered immediately. "I'm not sleeping on the couch, right?" She laughed, warmer now, like a little bit of sunlight had slipped into my small apartment. "No, Lucas, you are not sleeping on the couch." I didn't know then that those 8 simple words would push the line between pretending and real. And in a city as big as Los Angeles, that one weekend in one small apartment would change everything. Saturday morning,
LA sunlight barged in through Mia's half-open curtains without knocking. Her apartment was in Silver Lake, an aging two-story building with fading paint, a few plants on balconies, and a view of hills stacked with little houses. I stood at her door with a backpack and a heartbeat pounding like an amateur drummer. The door opened before I could knock twice. Mia stood there, brown hair pulled into a messy tie, cheeks a little flushed, either from rushing or from nerves. She wore an oversized gray sweater and jeans, and honestly did not look like someone about to lie to her parents for an entire weekend. "You came," she said, like she was a little surprised I hadn't run. "You said there'd be no corpse. Seemed safe enough." She exhaled, then stepped aside, showing me her living room. I'd never really studied it when she was just the coworker. Now every corner said something. A small bookshelf with novels and sketchbooks, Polaroids with friends, and a slightly drooping plant in the corner, and a little dining table with 4 chairs that had clearly just been wiped down. "I changed the sheets in the guest room," she said quickly. "My parents will sleep there. She swallowed. "We'll sleep in my room. I mean, technically. You on the left, me on the right. I'm not going to shove you off the bed, don't worry." Her face went crimson as soon as she finished. "Sorry, this is awkward. This is awkward level 1. Level 10 is when your dad asks about wedding dates." She stared at me for a second, then gave a small smile that did something strange to my chest. "You're really kind to do this," she said quietly. Truth was, I was an idiot. An idiot who knew he liked her, knew this would make walking away harder, and still showed up. "Of course," I said. "I mean, who else can fake being in love with you as convincingly as I can?" Her eyes flashed for a split second. Something crossed there, then vanished again. A knock at the door sliced through the air. Mia went rigid, like a live wire. "That's them," she said. Her voice shook. She took a deep breath, then opened the door. A middle-aged woman with fading blonde hair pulled her into a hug like Mia had just returned from war. A man in a neat plaid shirt with a slight belly appeared behind her, carrying a suitcase and a warm smile. "Hi, honey," her mom exclaimed. "Oh my God, LA has not ruined you. You still look like our Mia." "I don't even know what that means," Mia muttered, but she smiled and hugged her back. Her dad held out his hand to me. "So, you must be Lucas," he said, gripping my hand firmly. His blue eyes studied me, curious, not cruel. Mia grabbed my upper arm, a little too tightly. "Yeah," she said, trying to sound casual. "This is Lucas, my boyfriend." That word boyfriend echoed weirdly in my head. I smiled, trying not to look like a man who had just been granted a front-row seat in a life he'd only watched from a distance. "Nice to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. I've heard a lot about you. Only the good stuff. I'm saving the bad for later." They laughed, and the tension in Mia's shoulders dropped a little. So far, the performance was going well. Too well.
Saturday played out like an episode of a family sitcom written by someone with a slightly mean sense of humor. They asked how we met. Mia turned to me with that smile, one that wasn't just for show, like she was hanging the version of our story on whatever I chose to say. "We met at work," I explained. "She showed up late on her first day, crashed into my desk, knocked over a stack of reports, and apologized at least 17 times in 1 minute. Mia laughed, her cheeks pink. "I'm not that clumsy," she protested. "He just likes exaggerating because he's an accountant and his life is boring." Her parents laughed. Then came the next wave. "What do you like to do together? Favorite movies? Dream vacation?" Questions that usually feel normal, unless every answer has to be improvised in 3 seconds. Every time they asked, "Why Lucas?" Mia would pause. At first I thought she was pulling lines from some script she'd written in her head, but what came out sounded too honest. "He's patient," she said once, not quite looking at her parents. More like she was hanging the version of our story on whatever I chose to say. He never makes me feel dumb, even when I mess up again and again. Another time, when her mom asked what she admired most about me, she spoke softer. He makes people feel safe. Like, you can stand on the edge of a cliff, and as long as he's there, you're not going to fall. Her parents smiled, thinking it was sweet. Me? I was just trying to remember how to breathe. Because the way her voice shook when she said, "He's someone you don't want to let go of," didn't sound like acting at all. It sounded like a confession, whether she realized it or not. Later, after a homemade dinner Mia sort of cooked, with a lot of Google help and a lot of my help, her dad asked me to join him on the tiny balcony that overlooked the city lights. Los Angeles threw its glow up into the sky like a city too proud to ever go completely dark. "Lucas," Mr. Thompson said finally, staring out, "be honest with me. Are you good to my daughter?" That question hit harder than I expected. Maybe because all day I'd stopped being sure what was pretend and what wasn't. "I care about Mia," I said slowly, choosing a half-raw honesty. "More than I realized before, to be honest." He turned and studied my face like he was searching for lies. Eventually, he gave a small nod. "She deserves someone who sees her value, someone who shows up when it matters, not just when it's fun." Something tightened in my chest. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't acting at all. I was just admitting something that had been there for a long time, but I'd been too afraid to name it. That night, after they went into the guest room, the apartment grew quieter, but not empty. Mia and I stood in the kitchen, 2 steaming mugs of tea between us. The soft yellow light above us cast long shadows on the wall. "You were amazing today," she said, voice gentle, eyes a little tired. "So were you. You played the part really convincingly." She stared down into her tea. "I wasn't really acting," she whispered. The air between us tightened. "Mia." "I know this was supposed to be just a pretend weekend. I know it's crazy, but when you showed up this morning, when you sat next to me at the table, when you answered their questions without making me feel stupid, everything felt right." She swallowed. "For the first time, I didn't feel like a failure in front of my parents. And that was because you were there." My hand shook a little as I set my mug down. This role had wandered way too close to something dangerous. Slowly, I lifted my hand and turned her face toward me, giving her every chance to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. If that was acting, then I wasn't pretending either. Her eyes softened, the small fear inside them melting into something more fragile. Hope. "Is this insane?" she asked, barely above a breath. "Probably. But most good things are a little insane." She laughed quietly, the same laugh as on the phone that night, except now wrapped in relief. "So, what happens now?" she asked. I reached for her hand, a simple gesture that suddenly felt like a promise. "Now, we stop pretending."
Sharing a bed with someone who just admitted how she feels while her parents sleep in the next room is a brand new definition of awkward. At first, we lay facing away from each other, an invisible line separating the left and right halves of her queen-size bed. City lights slipped through the curtains, drawing faint patterns on the wall. "Mia?" I whispered after a few minutes. "Hmm? Do you think we owe your parents the truth?" She was quiet long enough that I thought she'd fallen asleep. "Maybe," she said at last. "But not today." "Why not?" "Because today, For the first time since I moved to LA, they're going home with peace in their faces. They're not asking, when will you find someone? They're not looking at me like a broken project that needs fixing. Today, they saw me as loved. That word hung in the air. Loved. She continued. They don't know all the details, but that calm on their faces, I'm not ready to take that away yet. I understood. Sometimes a small lie is just a pause before you're brave enough to tell the full truth. So we let them believe this is real? I said. She rolled over slowly, now facing me in the dark. Lucas, isn't it real? Kind of hard to argue when your own heartbeat is already surrendered. I took a slow breath. I can't promise I'll never screw up. I have no idea how to be the perfect boyfriend. I reply to texts late, I overwork, and I have a toxic relationship with coffee. She snorted softly. I'm not perfect either. I overthink everything, I stress too much, and I rearrange my bookshelf at 2 in the morning for no reason. Yeah, I know. You still came. You're still here. Simple. But that sentence felt like a tiny universe collapsing into one point. Suddenly, all the small moments, offering to split lunch, dumb jokes in our cubicles, the way she brought me coffee when I worked late, they all made sense in a new light. Maybe this was never pretending. Maybe we'd just been waiting for an excuse to admit it. I slid my fingers slowly between hers under the blanket. She squeezed back. No fireworks, no dramatic soundtrack. Just two people in a loud city, finally finding a silence that felt like home.
The next morning, Los Angeles looked brighter than usual, or maybe that was just me. Breakfast was much more relaxed. Mia's parents joked, asked small questions. No more of those heavy looks that said, "Will our daughter be alone forever?" When it was time for them to leave, the hallway near the elevator felt full of both relief and something like sadness. Her mom hugged me long enough that I actually felt included in something. "Take care of each other," she said softly. "Really take care of each other, okay?" "Yes, ma'am," I replied. And this time, it didn't feel like a line in someone else's script. Her dad clapped a hand on my shoulder. "If you hurt her," he said, half joking, half not, "remember, I know how to use Google. I'll find you." "I'm more afraid of Mia than of Google," I said. They laughed. As the elevator doors closed, Mia laced her fingers through mine, tight, like she was afraid I might disappear with them. The hallway grew quiet again. "You know," I said gently, trying to loosen the tension in my chest with a joke, "I still am not sleeping on the couch." She turned to me, and there it was again, that smile, the one that felt like sunlight breaking through morning clouds. "I'd be mad if you did," she replied. We walked back into her apartment. Same things, the half-dying plant, the small dining table, the messy bookshelf. But the air wasn't the same. "We need to talk," I said, dropping onto the couch. She sat beside me, leaving a few inches between us, a few inches that felt like miles. "I know. About what we are." I looked at my hands. "At first, I thought I was just doing this as a friend, saving you from a weekend of passive-aggressive parent comments." She smirked. "They're experts at those." "But—" I drew a breath. "Everything I said to them was true. I didn't make up the part where I care about you." Mia's eyes glistened. "When you said on the balcony last night that you weren't pretending, I almost cried. You didn't cry. You just suddenly got very interested in the kitchen floor pattern. She laughed, then exhaled, her face turning serious again. Lucas, I've felt comfortable with you for a long time. Too comfortable for just coworkers. I kept telling myself, don't ruin this. Don't take the risk. Don't lose the one person who makes the office not feel terrible. So, my heart jumped. You liked me before this whole fake boyfriend drama? She shrugged shyly. Maybe since the first time you secretly swapped my coffee with decaf because my hands were shaking from stress, or when you stayed late even though your work was done just so I wouldn't be the only one stuck in the office. I hadn't realized those little things counted. So, all this time I searched for the right words, pretended not to see what was right in front of us? Pretty much. Until I panicked and dragged you into a giant lie with my parents. Not your best strategic decision, but maybe the best accident you've ever made. She looked at me, confused and smiling at the same time. Lucas, her voice lowered. If we try this, for real, are you sure you won't regret it? We still work together. If it falls apart, it could get really awkward. If I don't try, I know I'll regret it. Every single day. I turned fully toward her.
I can't promise this will be perfect, I went on. I can't promise we'll never fight over stupid things. But I can promise one thing. If I choose you today, I'll choose you again tomorrow and the next day, as long as you still want to choose me too. Her eyes filled, but the tears stayed put. That sounds like a very reasonable definition of love, she said with a shaky little laugh. Not fireworks, not movie soundtracks, just two people who keep picking each other, even when they don't have to. She nodded slowly. I choose you, she said finally. Those 3 words in a small Silver Lake apartment felt bigger than the entire city. I moved a little closer. Can I kiss you? I asked, giving her one last chance to pull away. She didn't. Only if you promise to keep pretending at the office when our boss walks by. I laughed quietly. Deal. Our first kiss wasn't a blockbuster scene. No cameras, no cheers. Just nervousness, relief, and something warm unfolding in my chest. When we pulled back, Mia rested her forehead against mine. So, she said, her breath still uneven, when do we tell our parents that this fake boyfriend thing isn't fake anymore? Maybe next visit. For now, let them enjoy their imagination, because this time what they imagined isn't that far from the truth. She smiled. Outside, Los Angeles stayed loud, proud, and full of light. But inside a small apartment in Silver Lake, 2 people who used to be coworkers and a weekend lie chose each other in the simplest, bravest way, by not pretending anymore. Because in the end, love isn't about how dramatic the beginning is. It's about how often you choose the same person even on the most ordinary days. And that weekend, in a city that never really sleeps, we finally decided to wake up.